Welcome to Key Body and Spirit, the Way of Biohacking podcast / YouTube channel. This is Dr. Tay, and this is...
I'm Linda, Nutritionist Yogini. What's up, what's up?
And this is...
Hello, everyone. It's Nikki, employee of Tay's and a public health student.
Okay. All right. So on today's episode, we are going to be recording on... Today's episode will be on the skin, right? Linda, do you want to start us off on following up?
Yeah, so I chose this topic today because 2 episodes ago on women's health, Nikki brought up a really interesting point on when he switched to his no fragrance products. He went through a phase where his back broke out and eventually it cleared up again. So Nikki, do you want to elaborate a little on that?
Yeah, I mean, I saw some research on like phthalates and things like that, and on the actual like ingredient called fragrance, and it's not good for your hormones. It's bad for your endocrine system. So I completely cut it out, and as soon as I removed it, I noticed my whole back broke out pretty bad, especially by like my shoulder blades, which is not typical. Like I'm pretty much done with puberty. I'm gonna be 21.
Pretty much.
Yeah. So that's not like typical. Normally that's when you're like 16, 17.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought it was so odd. And then it completely cleared up in the matter of a few weeks, and now my back's like totally clear. So something happened, whether it was hormonal, my hormones regulated themselves after clearing that out. I don't know exactly what it was, but something changed for sure.
So
I wish I had like labs that I could have done, but
yeah,
I didn't.
One day when this podcast becomes really popular, we'll order all the labs and stuff like that.
Get all out blood work.
So I have a really bad history of acne since I was a teenager. It was really bad. It was totally embarrassing. I was a teenager and I would get flare-ups in my nose and there would be a pimple on top of a pimple. And this went on until like even in grad school. Mm-hmm. And even right before I got married. And I gained total control over my diet when I got married and moved out of my house. And my parents was like, "You're Korean, you have to eat spicy foods." Mm-hmm. And how can you be a real Korean person who cannot, what do you mean you cannot eat kimchi and all these things? And they would just dump it on my food, on my plate, living with them. And in grad school, all my teachers are like, "Tay, you gotta lay off the spicy foods." Mm-hmm. And like culturally, that is so hard to do. Like as a Korean person, how do you stop eating spices?
Right.
And as I'm breaking out more and more and more, I'm showing my parents looked, and then like my dad's like getting so offended, right? He's like, "Then you can't eat anything." And eventually, when I moved out, I talked to my wife. And she said, it's very important for you to have clear skin, especially as a practitioner. You need to be presentable. Right. And how can you give people health advice when your skin is not even clear? And so she was very instrumental in getting my skin better. It's not like 100% better even till today, but I got it better. And now I have less flare-ups and things like that. And it's primarily because I don't eat spicy foods anymore. Yeah.
I totally relate to as a practitioner and having to have clear skin, especially as a nutritionist dietitian. Yeah. It really dawned on me when I did a teen workshop. Okay. And then the teens came up to me after and was like, "Your skin is glowing. What do you do?" Mm-hmm. And then I was like, "Oh, I completely changed my diet. I had to cut out a lot of fried foods. I was living in the South for a while. I have to limit how much spicy food I eat. That's a big part of it." Yeah. I started doing the apple cider vinegar. Mm-hmm. They were not satisfied with that answer. They're like, "What products do you use?" I'm like, "Okay." So I went through this whole skin thing where I was getting all these rashes on my face. Yeah. And that's when I really realized it really has nothing to do with what you put on your face. Like, yes, that's like the final touch, but it really begins with the diet and how well you treat your body.
Yeah, I think it absolutely is incredibly tied in with your diet. And to kind of branch off the spice for a lot of people causes gut inflammation, and that leads to gut dysbiosis, leads to acne. And one of the also major culprits for gut dysbiosis and leaky gut is lectins, which are, tiny molecules which are so small that they could pass freely through the tight junctions of the gut. and causes gut inflammation. The gut inflames, your immune system reacts, and it leads to acne. And so optimizing the diet is so important if you want to have clear skin. And you notice that with a lot of people. I mean, I see my friends who frequently, go out drinking, which alcohol leads to gut inflammation, and they're eating poorly, and they have a lot of acne, and they're upset. Why do I have pimples? I'm older, I shouldn't have pimples. Like, maybe you should look into a lifestyle change.
So I get like teenagers to come in, right? And I have this one gentleman, he was a basketball player, good looking kid, and he would cover his face with hair, like really grow it out to cover his face. He would sit in the back, and he had real bad posture. And he went to numerous dermatologists, and they put retinol or retin-A or whatever and all this stuff, and he put a lot of skin and really didn't work, and his skin started becoming really dry and red and inflamed, and he became like very cystic. And when it became very cystic, they would give him antibiotics, and the antibiotics would really help, but eventually when you would get off of it, it would come back, and it would come back worse because now his microbiome is like more messed up.
Right.
And he heard about what I did and started coming to the office, and this kid was so easy to work with because he already knew which foods made it worse. So the dietary consult part was, he already had it down, and he just needed a way to control that. And so it was a combination of a facial cleanser. You ever hear about the derma roll?
No, what's that?
The derma roll is
the little needles.
Yeah. What do you know about it, Nikki?
Well, I've seen some stuff that it could stimulate collagen production. But I mean, I bought one. I don't use it because I noticed I was getting pimples.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, it's a dirty little roller with a bunch of needles on it, and you're just scratching your skin. Like, of course it's going to give you pimples. So I stopped using. So
derma rollers needs to be very kept clean, and keeping it in the bathroom is not the place, because the shower makes it very damp and moisture, and it becomes a breeding ground for bacteria. So in my office, I use a derma roller. It's a little roller with little needles sticking out, and you roll all over the face, and it kind of like gets the inflammation out of the acne and lets it really air out. And that really addresses a lot of the skin. And you have to use a combination of like a lot of vitamin C, because vitamin C helps with the correction of the collagen structure. For young people, it's a lot easier. For older people, it's a little bit different. And it's a combination of what is that? Like a lot of cooling herbs to bring down the inflammation. But more importantly, like some people have to go through a detox the way you did, right? With the chemical detox. So there's so much toxins in our everyday use products, ranging from shampoos, the cologne, the perfumes that we use, the soap is covered in fragrances, and all of these things, they do have an impact on your body. And when we're young, we think like, oh, our health is great, so it really doesn't affect us. But as we get older, people become more and more sensitive to it. So what are some cool foods that you can recommend for our listeners to start dabbling with from a nutritional side?
For me, it's all about food preparation method.
Okay.
Once I switched to steaming more of my foods, that made a dramatic difference in my skin.
Yeah.
And like really reduced breaking out, especially when I'm PMSing. So making sure that I'm not eating highly inflammatory foods.
Okay.
Inflammatory foods would be foods that are prepared in high temperatures over a period of time. A lot of processed foods are highly inflammatory as well. Making sure you're staying hydrated, drinking adequate amounts of water, and eating foods that have high water content, like fresh fruits and veggies, bone broth, highly anti-inflammatory. All of these are part of a lifestyle change, because it's not like you drink bone broth for a week and you're going to have beautiful skin.
Right.
It has to be consistent practice.
One of the things I recommend across the board is, especially in the beginning, is Diet that Jiao.
Okay.
Yeah, Diet that Jiao. People from different various provinces in China, they pronounce this formula very, very differently. Some people call it Tai Chi, or, but basically this formula comes from the Shaolin temples for martial artists. And this goes back to that famous scene in Karate Kid, like he gets messed up, right? And Mr. Miyagi's like, smell bad, good medicine. And he applies it to him, and next day he wakes up, and like his injuries are gone.
Yeah.
And this formula goes back to the Shaolin temples, where they do a lot of like strikes and they block each other with their arms. And then based on Wolf's Law, your bones become stronger. But as the blood vessels are being hit, you get these nasty bruises as the more you practice. So the martial artists came up with these blood moving formulas, that because bruises technically are blood that escape the blood vessels, and they're pooling in the area, and causes hypersensitivity by exerting a lot of pressure on the nerves. So when you move these dead blood around your skin, it tends to make these things go away. And so normally it was supposed to be used for, martial arts injuries or bruises. And there was a guy named Millard Roper, who was one of my herbal teachers at the school that I went to. And this guy was like an herbal specialist. He was like so passionate about herbs, and he was known for making this really good, like potent, like, because he didn't go cheap with the ingredient. Like he put like extra just to make sure that the concentration was extra strong, and the whole school knew about it. And I bought a bottle from him because I was practicing, the arm strikes. And then at the time I had a lot of acne, and I went to this guy for his blood moving formulas, and he would tell me, Tay, I see that you have acne. Why don't you use it for your acne? And I started using it, and I realized that it worked. So for this recent girl that I started treating around like last fall, winter, and early, this year, she had like a lot of acne across like the jawline. And it was not just like one, it was like a concentration of like, and she kept on using it. And she came by like this past week, and oh my God, her skin really cleared up. Really, really cleared up. And once again, this girl, her diet is very, very clean. And what the derma roll does for people, it helps break like if you have an acne in one spot, that spot will always grow another acne, because the oil sebum sacs, right? It always fills up again. And if you eat bad oils like, fried chicken wings and stuff like that, those saturated fats, they kind of like, fill into those holes and becomes ripe for infections. And what the derma roll does, it breaks those sacs. And if you increase your vitamin C content, it helps realign and heal better. And these oil sacs become smaller and smaller and smaller. That's why, like, people who have like severe bad back acne, they have that one spot where the blackhead just grows into this humongous size. And you see on YouTube videos where those, like,
there's a whole niche for that.
I got caught into those rabbit holes where like you watch one, you're like, oh my God, that is so disgusting, but it's so satisfying to watch. So you end up watching a series and like, why am I watching all of these things? Yeah.
And one thing that we all love, which also helps a lot with acne, is cold exposure, cold showers, cold plunges. It really helps to decrease the oil on the skin, and it sends a lot of blood to the surface of the skin, which will, in turn bring white blood cells and help fight that, because a pimple's an infection.
Yeah.
It helps fight that infection. So cold showers and cold exposure would really help someone with oily skin, especially.
I think I was one of those people. And I think doing cold exposure on a consistent basis did lower the level of acne. And I used to have this like really bad situation in the back of my neck. I think it's still visible now. And I used to get a lot of acupuncture on the back of my neck, and I still need to go for ongoing care. But ever since I started like really changing my diet, even about like 2-3 years ago, it started really getting better. So I'm still battling like skin conditions even till this day, and I'm 42 years old. But good thing is it's not happening on my skin. And for those who are watching YouTube, like right here, my left side underneath my eye, there's a dark spot. I finally brought in the Dietitian formula and put it in my bathroom, and I'm going to be massaging it away, right? So for those who are watching this YouTube channel, you'll see that dark spot on my left cheek eventually disappear. And I've done this in the past because when I was in acupuncture school, I would do like horrific things to my face, like needling on the side, electrical stim, and trying to pop the sac, and then it would leave a bruise mark. And if it wasn't for the Dietitian, it would have been permanent. So the Dietitian formula is like godsend because it has the ability to move blood and therefore like clear that part out. All right. I want to touch base with what Nikki was saying about the Wim Hof breathing, how the blood and all of these things raising the immune system and how it affects the skin. Because in Eastern medical theory, guess what dominates the skin? It's the lungs, right? And the lungs, lung is one of those weird organs because when you, it's a concentration of a lot of cells, the lungs. They say that if you were to flatten out like one layer of cells and spread it out, the lung can cover an entire tennis court, right? And no other organ can do that. So it's like a lot of like very dense, concentrated amount of cells. So, and if you think about it, when you, like we talk about this all the time, when you take a deep breath into your maximum capacity, you're generating the internal pressure in the body, and the blood reaches the surface of the skin. And so the lung health, right, how much air you can breathe into it and the pressure you're able to generate ultimately impacts the surface of the skin, the way Nikki just described it. Nikki, were you able to find like other research about the skin?
As far as cold exposure?
Or anything. Yeah.
I saw a lot of stuff on eczema. And the diet. Eczema is really interesting. I saw a study done where they took two groups of dogs. I know like people aren't dogs, but it's still really interesting the conclusion. And one group, they both had eczema. One group was fed kibble, kept getting fed kibble, and the other was fed raw beef, just raw beef, and like a ancestrally appropriate diet. And the one that was fed raw beef, 100% of their eczema went away, and the one that was fed kibble, it stayed. They kept having eczema. So it shows that eczema is an autoimmune condition. It shows how big the diet affects our immunity and our autoimmune conditions, and especially eczema. A lot of people, they'll switch to a much better diet and their eczema will clear up.
So I want to talk about eczema real quickly. I've worked with multiple people that suffered lifelong eczema. And a lot of the times they would go see a dermatologist. Dermatologist would be like, okay, here's this cream, steroid-based cream. Yeah. And what that cream does is it really restricts the circulation to the surface, so it just visibly reduces the redness of the skin. Okay. And it doesn't actually treat what's going on underneath, which I believe a lot of what Nikki is saying is all goes back to what you're putting into your body and then how your body responds to it. Like everything that's going on inside, it shows up on the skin, typically on the face, in one way or another.
Like when they look at the face, if it's like around the lips, right, it's usually like a large intestine issue. If it's like around the cheek area, that's a lung issue. If it's the nose, it's the spleen issue. If it's the forehead, we call that the yang ming, where a lot of the blood is, and the blood gets too hot, and that's when you realize, okay, you really got to change your diet. So depending on where the acne is like recommended to how they should proceed. And this was years back. There was one girl who had a clean diet, everything was good, but she kept on getting acne on the side of the cheeks of the face. And one thing that I found that she was doing wrong was she would use soap and wash her face, but she wouldn't clearly get the soap out of her face. So it was the way she was washing her face and accumulating this soap situation on the skin, and she was not really getting it out. So eventually, when she's changed the way she was massaging her face while washing her face, changed that part of the face to get clear up. So very, very interesting. Another thing is posture. If you have bad posture and you have leaning head, you're restricting the lymphatic flow from your face to the head. So that's one of the things I always address with the posture, right? And so there's a lot of elements being tied in here. Always nutrition, right? Take out the detoxing agent that you need to get rid of your body and start putting good things in. And you talked about bone broth, right? You ever have what is that, like collagen rich foods like bone broth, but other than bone broth?
Yeah, so it was really funny. Over Lunar New Year, we had a visitor eat dinner with us, and every food on the menu, the way we described to her, we're like, we eat the chicken feet because it has collagen. Collagen is good for your skin. We eat sea cucumber because it's filled with collagen. Collagen is good for your skin. We eat pork trotter because it's filled with collagen. Collagen is good for your skin. These are all like anti-aging methods used traditionally in Chinese culture. A lot of the foods we choose is for collagen. It's for eternal youth. It's for beauty. It's for the buoyancy, the plasticity of the skin to maintain supple throughout the lifetime.
What is that? Let's talk about the American diet, right? We're talking people who eat cereal for breakfast, right? A hamburger for lunch, and maybe some pasta for dinner, right? And like the standard American diet, there isn't that much room for collagen if they're not exposed to bone broths, right? And they count calories, not, minerals, right? And thanks to this like health wave of consciousness of health and wellness is coming to the minds of a lot of different people, they're getting introduced to these like bone broth, and then like, oh, these things are changing. I met these women. They were involved in this like collagen drink in a subscription fee, and they were posting like before and after photos, and oh my god, their face was changing right away. Like their chins would become more tensile, the face they would look like maybe like several years younger than they were. So this goes to show how much like collagen is important in the diet. And I think collagen is not something that you get it in the cream and try to put it on your face. It should be something that you should be eating on a regular basis.
And it's also really good for the lining of the small intestine. It really helps to repair. If you're someone who suffers from a leaky gut, which is something that I had for a long time, I took a lot of collagen, and it really helped to repair that intestinal wall, that lining. And you'll develop that from having a poor diet, the leaky gut, the dysfunction. And just collagen. I mean, I actually have my collagen. I have a whole bag of mine right next to me.
Oh, nice.
Like, I eat it. I take it all the time, and it's something that I think most people would benefit from. Not just the gut, the joints, the skin. Like, there's a lot of benefits to taking it.
Is it bovine source?
A lot of foods that taste good. It is bovine, yeah.
Yeah.
Of course it is. Come on, you know me.
There's fish source too. There's fish source of collagen, and I think a lot of it comes in powder format these days, but I always recommend, getting it in a food on a consistent basis.
And a few weeks ago, I went to Whole Foods and I found a grass-fed beef bones with the marrow, and I put them in my air fryer and I roasted them. Yeah. And I just like scooped the marrow out, and it was so delicious. And like that's something that's so like it's so nutritious, but it was like I was eating like just like salty like butter. Like it was so like creamy and good. And it's something that's also so nutritious. So a lot of people have this notion like, you know, all those nutritious, you know, collagen-rich foods that don't taste great. It was so good. It was just expensive, so I don't do it much, but it was so good. It was worth it.
You gotta sprinkle the salt with the elbow, like the Salt Bae.
Yeah, it's a shame though, because I think it was 4 chunks of bone. Once it was maybe like 1 spoonful of marrow per. So I got like 4 spoonfuls out of it.
Yeah.
So it was a very small amount of food, but it was so yummy.
Like I was watching the National Geographic or whatever, right? And you see the what is that? The lion, right? Catch like a big animal and then just going at it, eat, and then the jackals come and then they eat, and then next thing you know, the birds, you know, the vultures, they come and they pick all the bones, right? And the smaller bones, the jackals, the hyenas, they would chew through the bones because they got these like really like strong bones. And the only thing that would be left are these big bones, right? And people would come by, right? When everything's done, they would take these big bones and they would have a barbecue and they would use a stone tool to break these bones. And I gotta say, there was a lot of bone marrow in there. Yeah. And the bone marrow, like if you think about it, it ties in Eastern medicine, it ties into your kidneys. So it's like, you know, revitalizing your body. It's good for the brain because the brain is also the marrow. If you think about it, like the bone marrow inside of our bones, technically, that's the same stuff. It just happens to be the brain, right? It's inside of a bone too, like the skull.
Right.
And if that gets really developed, it develops into the central nervous system in Eastern theory. So like bone marrow is like one of the most important things that modern society is just learning to eat these things now. And I think there is tremendous amount of benefit of people buying meat and not throwing bones away. So like when I go to Whole Foods, I buy that, you know, organic chicken and I tear the meat apart, but I save the bones. And when it's, you know, I make a bone broth and I keep it frozen in stock in the refrigerator, and when I need to, you know, do some cooking or whatever the case is, I always have like a steady supply because of it. Yeah. All right. We talked about blood moving formulas, right? It's good for superficially, but it's not, that's just cosmetic. It just helps move the dead blood, right? But the emphasis here is on good nutrition, right?
So tying this all together, yes, the emphasis is on nutrition, which is, I think, the foundation of everything we talk about regarding biohacking, but also breath work. Last week during the immunity workshop, we did a lot of breath work. We did a lot of breathing. And at the end, like just looking at everyone's foreheads, or even after the light touch technique, you look like there's a glow to the skin. Yeah. Even though it's not like physically, it's more of like an aura, if I may.
Like, how do you describe that? Like I don't have the words to describe what really happens to those people before and after the light touch technique. Yeah.
To me, it just looks like something is brighter. Something is lit up inside. Like it might be like behind the eyes or like around the forehead. But after this breath work, like the skin is glowing. And even after the cold plunge event last time, I didn't participate in the cold plunge, but I participated in the breath work, and I experienced the breath work the next day. And that same night, my skin was bright. Like I had a nice little flush to my cheeks. I was brighter. It's really crazy what the breath and deep breathing can do for your skin.
I remember when you came back from what was it, Costa Rica? Yeah, and I'm like, okay, this is not the Linda that left. Like, she looks younger, and I'm like, I get it. Like, she was in a tropical area drinking all these like fruit juices, different fruit juices. I was so jealous about that. I'm like, oh, she drank fruit juices every single day from the tropical area. But some people call it the yoga glow. Is that what it is?
Yeah, and a combination of, I was practicing yoga every day. I was assisting a 200-hour teacher training. We practiced a lot of breath work.
Yeah.
We ate locally sourced seasonal foods 3 times a day with lots of fresh fruit in forms of juices and whole fruit. So I had this whole change versus here in New York, I eat a combination of takeout, home-cooked food, on-the-go foods. It's just I eat more fresh food, of course, when I'm in a retreat setting where it's all provided for me. And that made such a huge difference.
Convenience, right?
Yeah.
Convenience.
I love that you brought up eating locally. I think it's something that's so important. Every Saturday where I am in North Carolina, there's a farmer's market from 9 to 1, and I go every Saturday and I'll get like local eggs. It says like the farm where these eggs were laid, and it's, you know, a few 20 minutes away, and then I get local honey, I get local berries, and it's just you just feel so much better about, you know, supporting a local farmer, and it's also better for you, you know, eating at your latitude and things like that. It's more compatible with your biology where you are.
I think local foods is measured by within a 100-mile radius from what I heard. And yeah, local foods affects your microbiome differently than foods that was out of not within 100 miles and stuff like that. So, oh man, it's like, I think you got it really cool. So every Sunday you go to the farmer's market?
Every Saturday. Yeah,
every Saturday.
I love when I get sometimes the guys there, sometimes not, but he sell like local grass-fed beef, and that's like I gush over that. That's my favorite thing in the world. That's my favorite thing ever.
Like, one of the hardest things about like cooking healthy, even at home, is hard to find sauces. Yeah, hard to find sauces. And the sauces are really hard to source because they're contaminated with like all this like preservatives and things like that. There was a company called Red Boat. It's like a fish sauce. You know, like I don't know how to pronounce it, but the Vietnamese fish sauce. Like, I looked at the ingredients, I'm like, like, it should be just fish and salt is like a natural preservative. And like, why do they got to add all of these things? And someone turned me on to Red Boat, and oh my god, like, it's just 2 ingredients, fish and salt, and that is it. And that's the way it should be. And the sauces really help. Whenever I go eat what is that? The hot pot. Yeah. hot pot. You get this broth, and what is that? You throw tons of vegetables. Like me, I throw like a ton of mushrooms. And then I know I'm eating healthy, right? But then I go to the sauce section, and I'm like, this is sketchy, you know? Nikki, have you been to Hot Pot?
I haven't yet.
Okay.
I'd probably just stick to like the meats.
All right.
But what's the broths?
The broth, they have the dashi, they have the pork bone, right? And they have a spicy version sometimes.
They usually have like a mushroom broth for vegetarians and vegans.
And I know this great spot is Mizumi, and they have grass-fed choices. It's all you can eat, man.
I'm actually gonna be home from this coming Wednesday to Sunday.
Okay.
For Easter. So
okay.
We should do a cold plunge. We should do whatever that was called, musibi. I don't remember what it was.
All right. Let's take
we'll go
Nikki
hot pot.
Yeah, the hot pot over here. Yeah.
Nice.
All right. So, in order to have clear skin, detox away from the stuff that has a lot of chemicals and highly processed food, and that includes wheat bread, right? And in order to like nourish your body, like to have better skin, deep breaths. And notice how like all the information that we're giving is the common denominators for health is pretty much the same. And I think this is what they're defining to be a blue zone diet, right? And in order to have like good gut health, you need to eat a lot of starches, believe it or not, like legumes and stuff like that, not like just potatoes and, French fries.
Yeah, so just staying away from too many refined carbs and refined salts. So things with refined salts would be like a lot of processed meats, like deli meats. So choosing like whole cuts of meats and seasoning it yourself would be a healthier option for your body. And then instead of wheat bread, choosing even sourdough, something that has some type of probiotic. Prebiotic foods are high fiber foods. Choosing lots of those, also great for skin health.
I definitely think that sourdough, I mean, I don't eat bread at all, but if I was to, advise somebody which bread to choose, it would always be sourdough. Just the fermentation process. It detoxifies all of the toxins that are normally in grains, and the lectins. It breaks down the lectins and the phytic acid. So definitely the most absorbable, compatible bread, I would say, is sourdough.
There's a Marie Blanche in Great Neck that they have sourdough. I used to just go there and get the sourdough and just eat it, and that's a good, really, really good bread. And I think there's a person who also sells sourdough bread in the farmers market. We got to check out the local farmers market in Manhasset, Great Neck, because I think spring's around the corner. I think it's definitely worth checking it out. All right. I think this is going to conclude today's episode on the skin. And I will bring a bottle of Dietitian next time and and keep a blog, I guess, of what's going on in my skin. I think that would be a very interesting thing to check. And we'll take it from there. All right. Thank you for tuning in once again. And hit that like button, comment below for any questions, and please share this with your friends and family. And we look for more for your support. And until next time, thank you.
Peace.